Dr. Kent Nelson is Dr. Fate, a powerful sorcerer and agent for the Lords of Order who fights evil alongside his wife Inza. His amulet, cloak and helmet are creations of the ancient Nabu, who acts as his mentor and spiritual guide. He is a founding member of the Justice Society of America. Kent Nelson was the son of archaeologist Sven Nelson and, around the year 1920, the two of them were exploring the Valley of Ur in Mesopotamia when they discovered an underground pyramid. It contained Nabu, an ancient immortal from the planet Cilia who had been held in suspended animation for thousands of years. Kent released him, but the lever accidentally unleashed a poisonous gas that killed his father. It would later be revealed that Nabu engineered this situation to gain a new host. Nabu decided to mentor the young boy in the secrets of the universe, giving him incredible powers through total molecular control and taking his grief away from him. He would serve as an agent of the Lords of Order in their never-ending battle against the Lords of Chaos. Having finished his training, Nabu gave him an amulet, cloak and helmet to become a champion of good as Dr. Fate. Kent would go on adventures as Fate, although Nabu's spirit would always guide him through the helmet, and he would awaken with little memory of his own exploits. He would go on to meet a beautiful college student named Inza Kramer while traveling through Alexandria, and she would become his longtime romantic partner and confidant. His first battle was against the evil sorcerer Wotan, who struck at him through Inza using an agent named Thomas Frawley. Dr. Fate went on to fight evil threats with his powers along with Inza. Having locked Wotan for good, Fate stopped Magno the Mighty. He recovered and destroyed the Lost Book of Thoth, defeated two species of evil space men, and stopped the Norns. Like this, Fate accomplished many feats against supernatural threats. Eventually, Dr. Fate was challenged by the evil genius Karkal, who later joined forces with Wotan to defeat Fate, without success. Afterwards, Dr. Fate was challenged by the evil Mr. Who on more than one occasion. Fate later encountered other villains like Clock and the Red Sage. Kent Nelson became dissatisfied with his current situation, and he decided to become a real medical doctor in order to save more lives. Shortly afterwards, Kent became engaged to his faithful companion, Inza, and they spent more time together. Early in his career, Dr. Fate's first encounter with a hero of that era was the Spectre, the Wrath of God. Together they destroyed a military gateway to a netherworld of demons. It was World War II and America was pulled into the war. Dr. Fate and many other mystery men helped defeat an assassination attempt of President Roosevelt's life. At Roosevelt's request, they formed the Justice Society of America. During this time, Kent found the helmet becoming more and more possessive of him, so rather than abandoning his battle against chaos, Kent created the half-helm. Although Kent's powers were severely limited, he still had the ability of flight, invulnerability, and super strength. However, Kent donned the helmet one last time in order to find the missing Spectre. Dr. Fate discovered that the Spectre was under the control of Kolak, and in a titanic battle with the Spectre, he was defeated and the helmet of Nabu was lost somewhere in the Netherverse. It would not be until the early 1960s that Kent Nelson would somehow recover the helmet of Nabu and become Dr. Fate again. In the early 1950s, Kent Nelson had retired his Fate persona and became a physician, but sometime later he had recovered the helmet of Nabu under never-explained events, and in 1955 he fought Khalis, the mad Egyptian priest who once used his amulet of Anubis. It was not until 1963 that Kent would rejoin the Justice Society of America. As their Justice Society comrades aged, Kent and Inza seemed immortal. The magic Fate held over them virtually stopped their aging process. Inza and Kent also received a small portion of Ian Karkal's power, which gave them even more vitality. Little is known of Fate's adventures during this period save for the JSA's annual gatherings with the Justice League of America from the parallel world of Earth-1, the JSA being on Earth-2, and a pair of adventures he shared with fellow JSA member Our Man facing the monstrous Solomon Grundy and the villainous Psycho Pirate. After an encounter with both Flashes from Earth-1 and 2, Dr. Fate tried to stop the threat of a Lord of Chaos released upon Earth. Unfortunately, the Lord of Chaos took hold of Inza and used her against Fate to weaken his powers and eliminate his resistance. Although Fate was almost beaten, he managed to defeat the Lord of Chaos and restored the damage created, all thanks to his drive and determination to save Inza. This wouldn't be Fate's last encounter with Lords of Chaos, as he was soon sent to a strange dimension, where he had to confront Van Damien. Unable to beat the Lord of Chaos, Fate returned defeated, only to find that Inza had left him. Fate soon understood that this was all a plan to break him, and the mastermind behind it all was a renegade Lord of Order called Anar, who allied himself with Van Damien in order to take over the universe. Fate was helpless against their combined forces, but thanks to Inza's sudden return, he merged the consciousness of the Kents together inside the helmet of Nabu, giving him enough power to defeat the Lords of Order and Chaos. After a successful battle, Kent and Inza realized their deep love for each other and started working to improve their relationship. Later, Dr. Fate became a founding member of the new Justice League, and the heroes foiled the plans of Darkseid to turn the people of Earth against heroes. Kent's last adventure with the League was against the Gray Man. At the end of that case, Fate retired into space to meditate on the situation. During the late 1980s, chaos and order were at breaking point. It was the Kali Yuga, the final age of man. Order had pulled out of battle, waiting for chaos to engulf itself to create the new Golden Age. The strain of the Kali Yuga on Kent and Inza had caused them both to age rapidly. The strain on Inza was unbearable. In 1987, Inza committed suicide, which left Kent devastated and on the verge of suicide. Nabu had become more dominant in the relationship and would not allow Kent to die until he could find a new host body. Kent reluctantly helped Nabu find Eric Strauss as his protege as the new Fate. It was only during this short time that Kent discovered that Dr. Fate was meant to be the result of a merging of two humans with a mystical bond, much like his bond with Inza. Kent convinced Nabu to allow Eric Strauss and his human bond, Linda, to become the new Dr. Fate. Afterwards, Kent requested to die and Nabu allowed Kent to pass away. The Nelsons enjoyed an afterlife in which they lived normal lives unknowingly in the amulet of Anubis. They raised a child called Kent, and once again Fate would play a role in their lives again. In desperation, Nabu travels to the Tower of Fate in Salem to prepare the way for the true Dr. Fate, Kent and Inza Nelson. As they look into the amulet of Anubis, they see the souls of Kent and Inza Nelson. Jack C. Small and Petey venture into the amulet to find the Nelsons, while Linda and Nabu prepare to fight Benjamin Stoner. With Nabu's help, Linda can touch the items and become Fate with Nabu. Nabu and Linda create a four-armed Dr. Fate to battle the Anti-Fate. However, they fail and the Anti-Fate rejects the Lords of Chaos. Within the amulet, Jack C. Small and Petey discover that Hessa is inside the amulet. With his help, they find the Nelsons and try to persuade them to come back to Earth. Inza called this world heaven, as the Nelsons could live the life they wanted to live. In this world, they even had a son called Kent Jr. Inza does not want to leave this so-called heaven, but eventually agrees that they could make this life happen on Earth. Linda dies from her wounds from the battle with the Anti-Fate as her soul goes into Wendy, a woman who just recently died. There she is rejoined with her husband Eugene, Eric, and their daughter Reina, where they will become the new seeds of humanity. Nabu is given the choice between humanity and being an immortal Lord of Order. He chooses humanity and his soul goes into Wendy's unborn child. Kent Nelson and Inza Nelson become the new Dr. Fate. Powers. Divine empowerment. On his own, Kent Nelson possessed limited levels of superhuman abilities in which are mystical in nature, having been altered by Nabu himself to make him a capable bearer of the Helmet of Fate. While possessing limited abilities on his own, he can bolster his powers by using the Helmet of Fate or having a patron. Telekinesis. When used in conjunction with his helmet, this ability was powerful enough to move a planet into the sun. Without it, Fate could be strong enough only to lift cars. Flight. Invulnerability. Superhuman strength. Magic. Of his own admission, Nelson only knows a few spells he is able to cast on his own without the help of the Helmet of Fate. Phasing. Kent wore a spell to enter in his Tower of Salem. Photokinesis. Nelson can cast light through the spell of Coherent Light. Powers via Shatru. After having departed from Nabu for a time, Nelson was later taught how to channel his power through the Lords of Order and Chaos, namely doing so by the blessings of Lord of Order, Shatru. This allowed him to become Dr. Fate. Unlike the Helm of Fate, he can control such power without an artifact. Eldritch Blast. Teleportation. Abilities. Occultism. Tutored in the mystic arts by Nabu, Kent Nelson was considered one of the greatest sorcerers of his time. Medical science. During the earlier parts of his adult life, Kent Nelson later held a medical doctorate degree, M.D. He is a capable surgeon. Medicine. Archaeology. Kent Nelson once had a doctorate degree in archaeology and was considered a brilliant archaeologist. Pedagogy. Nelson was a certified college-level professor whom taught archaeology. His expertise was great enough to enable Nelson later to prove his knowledge when unable to use his credentials when in a younger body and later teach once more despite lacking his credentials. Multilingualism. He speaks Portuguese, Spanish, other and ancient languages as an archaeologist/occultist. Martial arts. Jujutsu. Weaknesses. Power limitation. While an accomplished sorcerer, he is incapable of utilizing potent forms magic on his own without a form of assistance. In his earlier years, Nelson was vulnerable to gas of any kind, or he could also be completely paralyzed if he was deprived from air to breathe. In addition, along mystical battles or casting powerful spells, Fate's power would be depleted and needs to restore his mystical energy. Dependency on the Helmet of Fate. Without the Helm of Fate, he is significantly weakened and can only perform some spells on his lonesome. Dependency on a patron. Similarly, he cannot perform more powerful spells without having a patron to the Lord of Order. It was once commented that he lacked the power on his own to sufficiently trap magic and must instead channel it through a Lord of Order. Equipment. Helmet of Fate. With the Helmet of Fate, Nelson is granted formidable magical powers and is considered one of the most powerful sorcerers in the modern age. With it, he possessed powers such as invulnerability. Dr. Fate could withstand military weapons, an explosion which could destroy a mansion, and even several punches from Kryptonians like Superman and Ultraman.